Alright everyone, we're finally back with a Titan build. It's been a while, but we really didn't want to neglect them as much as they already do themselves. We all know that Titans don't need guns because they just punch everything, but what if I told you you don't even need to punch anything anymore either? If you want to find out how, then you're in the right place. Subscribe today because it's the right thing to do. We're aiming for 173 likes, and finally, let's get into it. This build is pretty wacky and probably uses a playstyle you've never seen before. It's strangely really effective at ad clear, and you're not really shooting enemies directly at all, to be honest either. It's all about creating as many stasis crystals as possible to refund your abilities quickly, effectively turning you into a mini roaming super. Let's get straight into the build though, and we're hitting it off with the Stasis Behemoth. Now we're not using the ever popular Cryoclasm aspect as it limits the amount of fragments we can use. Therefore, we'll be using both Howl of the Storm and Tectonic Harvest. Howl of the Storm allows you to activate your charge melee while sliding to launch a wave of stasis energy forwards that freezes targets and creates stasis crystals. It's really effective at freezing a group of adds and is greatly underused and underrated. Shattering these crystals will create stasis shards too, thanks to the Tectonic Harvest aspect. Chuck on the Glacier Grenade to maximise your stasis crystal output and stasis shard generation so you can reduce your melee cooldown even further. As for the fragments, we'll be using all 4 of the new fragments introduced in Season of the Chosen. They have excellent synergy and are some of my favourites to use. Whisper of Chains is perfect for this setup, as whenever you're near a frozen target or stasis crystals, you'll take reduced incoming damage. This grants the resist perk and allows you to tank a lot of damage with a 25% reduction, which in this build is nearly always active. You also get a bump to your recovery stat too, as standard. Now we've got 2 fragments which will give a huge bump to your ability cooldowns. Whisper of Fractures will grant melee energy when you are near 2 or more enemies, and the Whisper of Torment will grant grenade energy when you receive incoming damage. These fit perfectly into the build here and are super useful when crowded by enemies during encounters. The last fragment is the Whisper of Impetus. You've probably never used this, but with the impending quick draw nerf, I reckon you should. Simply damaging a target with a stasis melee will reload your stored weapons and give a temporary boost to weapon ready speed. This grants the Nimble Arsenal perk for 5 seconds, which allows you to switch to your preferred DPS weapon, which is now also fully reloaded. Keep this in mind for raid boss damage phases too in the near future. Now that's the aspects and fragments sorted for this close quarter stasis build, so let's get into the exotics and weapons we'll be using, starting with the ACD Feedback Fence Exotic Gauntlets. Fury Conductors is the intrinsic perk, whereby melee hits build energy. Being struck by a melee attack reduces incoming damage and unleashes the stored energy in a devastating explosion. This stacks up to 3 times and will send a burst of energy to all nearby targets. It's a perfect fit in this build, allowing you to stay in the trenches dealing 360 degrees of damage output, but the best thing is that it can proc by using the Howl of the Storm side in melee to instantly get a 3-time stack, and even shattering the stasis crystals from this melee and damaging enemies with that will also add to your Fury Conductors stack. You can even add in the Reactive Pulse mod to improve this exotic even further and to even fill in gaps of any downtime too. Whilst charged with light, taking melee damage will set off a chaining electric pulse damaging nearby enemies. It's super potent, and these combined can wipe out a whole bunch of surrounding enemies easily. To become charged with light, chuck on the Elemental Ordnance mod to create elemental wells when defeating enemies with your grenade, granting ability energy when collected, as well as making you charge with light thanks to the Elemental Charge mod. Momentum Transfer will reduce your melee cooldown too when causing damage with your grenade, and Outreach will reduce it even further by using your class ability. But to keep this crazy build rocking, you'll need to shatter all the stasis crystals you create as quickly as possible, with high damage and high rate of fire weapons being perfect for this. The Aikilos SMG with a Demolitionist role is ideal, as not only is it great at destroying the crystals quickly, but you can benefit from the Demolitionist perk if you ever have any gaps in your abilities downtime. But the main heavy hitter we're using is Chaperone. This is the main DPS weapon here, and it's perfect for chunking damage on all frozen targets, including mini bosses or bosses. It'll destroy your stasis crystals in the blink of an eye, but you definitely want to save it for higher health enemies where possible, especially with the Roadborne perk, which will allow you to go on streaks of precision slug damage too. Lastly, we've got the Swarm Adept, with the heavy hitting nature of LMGs working nicely at taking out your stasis crystals. Remember, Impetus will auto reload your stored weapons, so feel free to swap between these and rotate weapons to allow you to destroy the crystals as soon as possible in between creating them. Now you're all set to roll from one stasis ability to the next. You don't need to shoot any enemies to be honest, as once you've created a row of stasis crystals, you just want to start going ham on them. If you've frozen any enemies, they'll be deleted and anything nearby will take damage too when they shatter. You're doing all of this just to create shards from Tectonic Harvest to recharge your melee, swapping between your melee and grenade and shattering both to fully recharge your melee ability. If you're in the middle of an encounter, you'll be triggering both Whisper of Torment and Fractures to return grenade and melee energy too by just being there. All the while, you're being protected by the Whisper of Chains and the wombo combo of the Feedback Fence and Reactive Pulse. It's crazy to me that you can effectively clear whole rooms without shooting a single enemy, as you just shatter stasis crystals everywhere. And you only need to think about damaging mini bosses with Chappie after you've frozen them, making precision shots super easy to hit for maximum carnage. So to finish this one out, I recently held a survey here on YouTube in the community tab, asking you all if you'd like more gameplay after the build portion, and as it turns out, you do. So I'm here to give the people what they want, so we'll end this one with some extended gameplay of this pretty wacky build. If you did enjoy this build guide, then please drop us a like below and subscribe if you haven't already. We're steaming into next season and I've got tons lined up for you all. That's it for this one though, so on that and as always, thank you very much for watching and I hope to see you next time.